more. But no, thank you.
I'll come to Ann Arbor one day and we can do that over lots of cheese.
Exactly. But no, thank you so much. It's kind of, there's something else I would like to add very quickly before we go. I don't know if we have questions. I think for artificial intelligence, as you said, there is quality. I think also there is another concept. It is about training and educating. I think we have a lot to share with people working in AI right now, and our different expertise and experience, based on the industry, I think could help a lot, because exactly as you said, what is quality, but how also do you maintain quality, and how do you use the right information, the right tools to make informed decisions? I think that's very important.
Well, I think our particular joint experiences, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're not they won't be unique.
Absolutely. No, but so it's great. Does somebody have questions? Sorry, for yeah. Please go ahead, Jan, of course. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rob. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Nice to see you.
Okay, hi, nice to see you. Regarding transporters, what really did you want to say there? Because I think you seem that you're kind of hedging your bet that a transporter could be a passive permeation via a protein in a membrane, or an active transport depending on energy or a gradient. Do you want to put your foot down, or do you want to keep both options open?
I don't think, I think the comment I made would be, both sides of the argument know that there are transporters, and we know that some of them are active transporters, that some things need ATP to get them into cells. But I do think it's also quite reasonable that things will go through on a more generic way, if you like. The proteins that might, like HSA, it's got specific sites, it's got generic sites, and is there, do some proteins act in that similar way? The fact that they're there, I think is for sure. It isn't a question of what's happening; it's just how extensive is it, and I think I just need to see more data. But it's just looking at the way that that we can see things, and the patterns and the differences that we can see amongst it. And I really do think that we shouldn't be treating all compounds the same with them. When we try and build a permeation model, I do think we just need to start striating those compounds and just sort of saying, these are of a similar particular characteristic. How natural product-like are they? Does that, is that a way of sorting them out to better understand what's going on?
Yeah. No, we looked into this several years ago, and then there was little knowledge of active transport driving uptake. This was then 2014 when we did a large survey of drugs and clinical candidates. But since then, things may have happened. But one thing is, well, that's what I'm kind of fishing for. Has the field moved on? Is there more knowledge on this? But it's still an open question then.
Yeah, there were some people looking into it. There are people like Carol Robertson in Oxford is looking a lot. She had got an interest in looking at the characterizing some of the transporters by mass spec, and so that I think there are some things that develop there. You get people like Janana Therapeutics in the US. They're solely, their main focus is looking through transporters. So I suspect some people may have a little bit of an understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
As I said, it's not a thing I personally had much hands-on experience of, but it's just observing what I see and it's seeing in certain things that actually some of the logic is there. And I think it was reading when I was doing some research for one of my talks, I came across some of Herbert's work and what he was saying, and I was on an advisory board with him, and then I came across one of Ron Quinn's papers, just this idea about the validation of the concept by natural products, and there's lots of bits that may well fit together. I think is my personal view. There's obviously a lot of dogma from some of it. But you know, somewhere between the two is the truth. And
Yep.
I think we need to be open-minded. And as in many things in drug discovery, sometimes play what's in front of you. I think Abby did a very nice job of showing us that. You know, in a way, you know, as Paul said last night, you know, the rule of 5 has kind of held us back from going into that space.
Yep.
But actually, you know, there are some productive things to be done there.
Yes.
With control of lipophilicity.
Oh yeah. Yes, for sure. Okay, thanks very much.
I think Clara, yeah, please go ahead. You have to unmute. Okay, you have to unmute. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
can I have my opinion as well on this?
Yeah.
So definitely there are transporters present, but I always think of the thermodynamic laws. If you have a high concentration of compound on one side and a low concentration of the other side, the compound wants to go through, unless, you know, there is a certain barrier. And I think, you know, to have an active transporter to work against this fixed flow thermodynamic drive, it needs a lot of energy. The transporters can be saturated, and it hasn't got. I had a good chat with the transporter guy, that we didn't find any example when the transporter effect was greater than 1 or max 1.5 log unit. So there is no 1,000 times difference between the thermodynamic rule and the transporter rule. And it has a limitation, as I said, it can saturate, it needs energy, constant energy supply, or PGP supply from the body to keep the compounds out. So I think that based on our models, the transporters are within the error, is a 1 log unit error, because we are not too much better to model the in vivo anyway. So it is interesting to investigate. So I am, like with Rob, a bit of in between, because it may have a certain important role, and we should recognize if what we measure is against the thermodynamic law, then we have to look for some other explanation. But I don't think it is overwhelming, or you can find 3 order of magnitude difference between the concentration, what you should of one side or the other. That is my view, but
yeah. I think with some of it is the fact that it's just they're facilitators. They're not necessarily making it quicker. I remember having a chat with Robbie Glenn. I remember him showed me a picture of a fluid membrane, and he said the chances are the way the motion you get, you may just pop open the charged tails, and it will expose a bit of lipophilicity. So he said that's not beyond the realms for certain sizes of molecules. And clearly there is an upper limit. I'm sure Jan will be well aware of that. But, you know, it's no one's been in there to look, have they? And it's quite difficult. So I think Paul wants to.
So yeah, please go ahead. You know, we are starting the roundtable discussion, and we have Paul and we have Franco also. So go ahead.
Hi everyone. I tend to side with Clara. Is it possible? I mean, I've seen that I couldn't jot down the reference. I've seen that impressive rendition, you know, replete with proteins of the cellular membrane. But if I use dead hepatocytes or some dead cell, or I have inhibitor, shouldn't I be able to demonstrate that you know, that the transporter will be dead, ineffective? Shouldn't I be able to demonstrate whether or not drug ABC is really facilitated or taken up? I still, maybe I lived too many years with this concept of passive diffusion more than, you know, I think mostly of efflux, not uptake, although it happens in liver and in other things. But if I did that experiment, I mean, wouldn't I be able to show that it is or it isn't?
Well, the first time I heard Doug speak, the first question I asked him was the differentiation between passive and active processes. And he said that he thought it would be quite a small percentage would actually be requiring that ATP pump. So,
okay,
you know,
sorry, maybe I missed it.
Yeah.
So we are saying that, because the message I took from your presentation, at least those slides, is that, oh, it's much more prevalent, the uptake, than we give credit for. Oh, it's almost the rule, not the exception. And other people have said that. That maybe I got the wrong message from what you said.
Well, again, that's what Doug Kell says. He says everything goes
Okay.
on the protein. He says nothing goes. He said his statement would be that it doesn't make physical sense to go through the membrane in that way. But then there are other ways of potentially breaking down the membrane. Limited phospholipidosis is a term I've heard to describe it, that you can actually break down the structure.
Thank you. I don't want to monopolize the discussion. It's very provocative what you said. I don't want to monopolize the discussion, though others may ask.
Paul's got one, I think.
Paul, yeah, please, Paul. Yeah.
So no, thanks, folks. I was just going to say, in relation to this, I think of the story of membrane. A membrane has as much protein as lipid in it, maybe more protein. And there is lots of pharmacological evidence that molecules can have their pharmacological activity through going into the membrane and binding to a binding site. On a GPCR, there are several GPCR examples. And it goes into a binding site and binds to the protein, elicits a pharmacological response, and the binding site is at the interface of the protein and membrane, or the drug even accesses a binding site inside, within the protein itself by accessing that from the membrane side. So there's more and more of that all the time appearing. There's a great deal of it, actually. You can see it with GPCRs. You can see it with ion channels, especially, as well, where molecules, the PK/PD is all defined by bound concentration rather than free concentration. So, the fact that within a membrane, there are likely to be, a host of binding pockets in all those proteins. And the fact that molecules can interact with them could be a facilitatory mode. And it's likely, isn't it, thinking about what Clara said, that, if you think of the structure-activity relationships for those binding events, they're probably going to use the physicochemical properties we know and love in the same way as we use for passive permeability. Yeah. They're going to overlap. So you're not going to see a mega difference. You're going to see more of a facilitated difference. Yeah. All that's arm waving, I realise, but I think it makes that makes a degree of sense with the a facilitated approach rather than a sort of active transport. I know it's not what Doug Kell says. He goes further and says no, it really is transport. But
I think the answer is there somewhere. It's just a question of how much, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
We have our new appearance.
Oops, what have I done?
Sorry, I thought you guys would look better all together on your panel.
I better sit up in my chair a bit, and I'm falling off the screen.
Sorry about that, Rob.
But so to go back to these transporters, and I think, I see the points that we may have not active transporters, but transporters that will facilitate the permeation of molecules adapting to the size of these transporters. Are they described somewhere? Do we because that's the question of what type of transporters do we have isolated? Did we isolate these transporters somewhere? Do we know how to identify them? They are proteins, they are other lipids, they are what are they? And I think that opens a kind of new area in terms of science. But that it's a very interesting new concept indeed.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Pamper. I just wonder if it's just a variation on a log D measurement. It's an assay I don't like, but there are some measurements there. And as I say, when I saw the data from the supplementary, is there just some recognition of the log D in there, and there's kind of just a when you've got it, it's just I don't know how has anyone ever proved that it is a decent, well, it's not monolith, it's the bilayer, but is there a proper interface between in the cell between the two aqueous sides, or is it just like a melange, I guess to use the French word? It's almost like it's a variation on octanol.
And we could envision, PEMPA has been a model, so as you said, with small molecules. Now we are going through larger molecules, different functions. If you think about what Giacomo just described, using the micelles on the C18, why not introducing, having a PEMPA assay with different other lipids, different micelles? That also could be maybe a permeability assay for larger molecules based on the discussion we had yesterday. So maybe there are kind of a lot of areas, that are opening right now. But yeah, yesterday I was thinking about this PEMPA assay. What if we were adding more lipids, phospholipids, micelles, something completely different that would, really help the transport or transport or the permeation of somewhere, the transfer of large molecules from one phase to the other one. Absolutely, yeah. And that's what we are trying to mimic again with chromatography and with all these different supports.
It goes back to Paul's comment yesterday about the regression to the mean, and we're ending up, no matter where we start, we're ending up with similar compounds especially in the last 20 years or whatever. Is that just a consequence of having to find this generic method for when they become oral drugs?
Yeah, and what would be
have we got to find ways that will truly expand chemical space? Because what you could say that this is the sweet spot that I often call it the Han-Kesri sweet spot, that is this mean that people are regressing to. Can we understand a bit more out in that ABV space? Can we understand about natural products that can really find their transport and will truly allow us to expand the chemical space in terms of size and lipophilicity? I don't like the term chemical space, but that's how I would describe it.
Absolutely, and even we could think about, now if we are dreaming about new concepts, what about today we had in vitro assays, and then we have the chromatography, and then when the in vivo assays. Now with more chemical space expansion, why we don't have the chromatography ahead of everything and directly correlated to some of the in vivo assays, for specifically large molecules? I think that would be, we have something to play with right now, because we have proven that chromatography has a lot of diversity in terms of support, and has proven that it could be really accurate. So why not using this to correlate with directly in vivo, and maybe even to work directly with this concept of chromatography, saying, hey, because we need references and we don't have on larger molecules or more new chemical space. So that could be interesting to advocate for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you in that. And what I would like to add, Robbie's fantastic, good, thought-provoking presentation. I really enjoyed. But I think what we are missing is, with this lipophilicity, is the charge. And I am a bit suspicious that these natural molecules and antibiotics and peptides, they have both positive and negative charge, and maybe that's why they are a bit out of the normal rule. If I could share my screen, I don't know, I have a very typical, can I, example, let me see, share screen.
It may be difficult because of oh yeah, you've been there, we're there.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, we can see, Clara. Yeah, we can see.
Sorry?
We can see.
You can see. This is my favorite two molecules, two known drug molecules, but I always show that just log D or log P is not enough to differentiate how they distribute in the body. You see, nifedipine is only one extra positive charge here. Oh, mind you, no, it's only one charge, and a little difference here, the nitro and the chlorine. and look at how the T half, the volume distribution is so different between the two compounds. And if you look calculated or even measured log P, log D, actually amlodipine is less lipophilic than nifedipine. So just by lipophilicity, we are not able to explain everything. And why I like the IEM, and I show you this slide if I can, the IEM and the HSA binding, because it differentiates the compounds between the according to the charge, the presence of charge. You know, when we use the Abraham equation, both IEM binding, both HSA binding was beautifully correlated with octanol water partition. So it's a really, it convinced me how good is that model to model the non-specific binding in the body. However, when you look at the distribution, whether the compound stays in the plasma compartment or goes to the tissue compartment, then the charge makes a big difference. And then you can see why, because the correlation is true only for neutral compounds. When you have negative charge, when we plotted, these are GSK compounds actually, not known drugs, and we color coded based on the 3 pH lipophilicity. So nobody told us, we didn't even see the structure of the compounds, but if the lipophilicity was higher at low pH, then we color coded it red, and if it was high pH, we color coded blue. And then you can see the difference that when you plot, there's no correlation. First I thought, oh, how come? Both are octanol water, both are lipophilicity, because if the compound is lipophilic, it sticks to wherever it can stick. And why they are so different, and the charge is I think we didn't put too much attention on it at them and during this workshop. You see, these are Rob and Shena's data what I usually use, because it also shows that the chrome log D, yeah, if the compound is lipophilic, it will bind with a certain extent, but if it has a particular charge, it will start to prefer certain proteins. And maybe this is the transporter effect. It could be that the charge makes a big difference. That's why it doesn't behave the compound as it should be. Now that's all what, now how can I go back and read back the
charge means also volume somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So space, that also could explain all of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
charges occur.
Charge and the sweeter ions are a very, very interesting area. They look like neutral, but no, in the body they are not. They distribute totally differently.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because actually for me it emphasized two things: the need of having electrically charged stationary phases, which are both human serum albumin and IAM, but also maybe also the need of predicting or even measuring really accurately the pKa, because essentially the charge is a function of the pKa. So that's actually bringing us towards another hot topic, I think. So it was really interesting to see.
Might be a next subject for next year, because yes, PK, no, but you're right, PK, we can see that more and more, it's getting more and more important to have also a lot of accuracy and robustness in this PK measurement. Absolutely. Yeah. Does someone in the audience have some questions? I know we had a question from Andrew regarding the benchmark of blood-brain barrier with the CNS world. Andrew, are you here? Do you want to ask a question, or can I ask it for you?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Just quickly, a quick comment to Clara. I mean, one of the things maybe to consider with the charge is just subcellular distribution. So things like lysosomal trapping are very powerful in driving that volume up for bases, for example. Anyway, No, the question was really, there was a lot of talk on discussion around log BB, so blood-brain barrier. And one of the aspects is that a lot of work has really suggested that's just driving lipophilicity and optimization, so increasing log BB, because it's basically binding non-specifically within the brain compared to being bound in the blood. And so really it's a question, I think KP, which is that ratio, KPUU is much more favored and helps to understand some of the efficacy matches. Just really what the thoughts of the panel are around using that kind of KPUU rather than KP. And actually, I think looking at some of the chromatographic methods, you may actually be better at predicting KPUU potentially than KP, but you're actually benchmarking against something which is probably not the best to optimize in the first place. So just really throwing that out.
Well, I think it's a really interesting question. Well, personally, I sort of used for validation also other indicators of passage of the blood-brain barrier. I use, for instance, in situ data as well. I think it's really an odd topic. So what is the best parameter to sort of describe the passage to the blood-brain barrier? Of course, it can mean different things. The different log BB is essentially measured at equilibrium. So after a while, essentially the animal is sacrificed, and then you take the brain fraction, and then you take the blood fraction, and you measure how much compound you have in either fraction, sorry. For sure, there are other descriptors out there that can provide usefulness. Even for instance, we actually used in a publication in molecular pharmaceutics in situ brain perfusion as well. I think they sort of convey different phenomena. Probably the in situ is more a kinetic, the descriptor is more a kinetic index, but it's really interesting what you were suggesting, Andrew.
It's just the reason. The reason is that a lot of people are moving away from just looking at that basic partition coefficient, because it's not really helping to optimize compounds, and actually looking at unbound concentrations in the brain versus unbound concentrations in the blood. And actually, one of the things that if you stripped out something such as transporters out of the equation for any compound with any permeability at steady state, when it arrives at volume, when it's arrived at steady state, without transporters, the concentration in one compartment will equal the concentration in the other compartment at steady state. And the permeation rate is just how quickly that equilibrium is established. And then what you have then is differential partitioning into the tissue, non-specifically in the brain, and that's what then drives the increase in the brain to plasma ratio, for example. And so I'd kind of like go down the route. I'd rather be optimizing on the basis of unbound concentrations in the two compartments, and just wondering whether just focusing on correlations with total brain to blood concentration is actually really driving down a dead end, albeit quicker. But is it really the right parameter to be measuring? And again, it also comes down to a lot of the discussions that are out there in the literature about protein binding, whether there's optimal protein binding or not. In fact, my situation where I would come from is that there is no optimum protein binding. It's just a number. I would like to be able to measure it accurately, but it is at the end of the day just a number, and it's not driving the unbound AUC at the end of the day. I know it has been counterintuitive in the past, but I think these are just some of the things that maybe when you're developing some of these chromatographic methods, are they really using the right benchmark to be optimizing with?
I tend to agree with you, but on the other way, I think that for validation purposes, essentially we are looking at quite ample databases in a way. So one of the advantages of logBB is that it's actually one of the oldest parameters, and we have essentially more logBB data than for other sort of assays that were optimized later. So I think there's also something that we need to take into account, also because for those experimental data, I noticed that there is a huge interlaboratory variabilities. So sometimes even when you refer to the literature and you look at the same compound, same assay done by different groups, essentially sometimes the data can be different, the value itself can be even sometimes substantially different. So this is something that I've seen several times in the literature with this biological measurements.
I suppose it comes back down to quality versus quantity. Just because there's a lot of data out there, if it's misleading, then maybe it's, we just have to actually accept we might have to go down a less data-rich environment.
Andrew, I just would like to thank you for this question, this KPUU, because I remember that I had a big problem with this. Because if the free drug hypothesis is true, the unbound in here, the blood or the brain should be the same. So you are absolutely right that the KPUU would show us the transporter effect. How much is it? And I did study at GSK because when I supported the neuroscience people, because they started the KPUU is more important than the blood-brain barrier, the total concentration ratio of the compound. But we didn't find very, very big difference. So the KPUU, if you log it, it was within 1, so it should be 1 or 0, so close to the 0. But it might be interesting, this would be way to assess the active transport, because according to the free drug hypothesis, the unbound should be the same all over the body. So if you divide one concentration with the other, should be a 1.
Yeah, unless, as you rightly say, unless transporters are involved.
Yeah, so that would be an interesting measure. And as what you mentioned, the AUC unbound and the plasma protein binding, I remember we had a big matrix group and they discussed when they published that plasma protein binding is not important. But to get the AUC unbound, how do you calculate? You need to know the plasma protein binding. So we have to measure it to be able to get the AUC. At least, as far as I know, this is the way how DMPK scientists can get the AUC unbound, because we can't measure, or we can't measure in vivo the tissue unbound.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely right. It is that conversion factor, but it's not the driving factor in the unbound concentration. The unbound concentration is the driving factor for the total.
Yes, I
unlike
agree
the reverse way around.
Yeah, moreover, what my view is that the tissue unbound is more dominant and more important than the plasma bound or unbound concentration. And we could show it that the coefficients for the tissue binding, the IAM binding, was always much stronger. And if you had a high plasma protein binding compound, it can be still a very good drug, like diclofenac. We have a lot of high plasma protein binding. Yeah, but we don't have very high tissue binder drugs.
Yeah, the lower the tissue binding, the better, actually. But yeah, no, it's just to put some thought out there as some of the science evolves around the parameters that are best for optimization, just to bear that in mind.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I agree that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it a lot, Andrew. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions? We really appreciate everyone staying, so long, even without a break. So really, thank you so much. It's a lot we're asking right now. Just I'm checking, and if not, I would like to know if someone would like to have to say a word to end this amazing 2 sessions, amazing workshop. I really would like to thank all of you. Great concepts, great way to share your expertise, and yeah, very provocative. I like it. A lot of good discussions, and I hope we will be able to follow up. Someone wants to say one word to end this workshop?
I think, well, big thanks to you, Laurence. I think Kate should put herself in the other chair so we can thank her properly as well.
Thank you so much.
Hold on. I'll let me see if I can figure it out before the end.
But yes, it's amazing, and again, so thank you everyone for all your nice chat and applause. But if we can follow up, I would say, we have this group on LinkedIn, and again, the idea is really to share ideas, to kind of even if to share concept, we don't. Yeah, here she is. Welcome. But yeah, using the group discussion, I think it is great. It's one of the first, honestly, conference, webinar, workshop where I've seen so many analytical chemists working in the same directions, and welcome to our medicinal chemists who support us and who have advocated for us. It's great. More to do, more to come. And if you want to come back next year, please feel free with plenty of new ideas. Kate, what do you want to say about that?
I just wanted to thank everybody for registering, and I will follow up with the program for anybody who registered late, and I will also be following up with a survey. It should be quick and easy, so please take time to answer it, as well as information on how to access the recordings. I believe I'll be posting them to our Annalisa YouTube channel. I just have to get the downloads and add them. So those should be available soon. And yes, please join our group and reach out to us anytime. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next year and continuing the conversation.
Yeah. And obviously, thank you so much, Clara, for coming. And obviously, you
yes, thank you, Clara. Thank you so much.
I thought Clara was advertising her cosmetics.
Yeah, so
if anyone wants Christmas presents, look up Clara's creams.
You mentioned and you invited me and Kate. Thank you so much. Sunday or Saturday afternoon work together, and then I realized this afternoon. So I am very, very busy at the moment, but in the morning, and now I continue to work.
But thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And yes, so we have nice pictures of all of us. Thank you so much. Have a great night, a great day, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to our participants as well. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.